Okay, we're reading from chapter 7, verse 15. Navam dushkritino moodah prapadyante naradamaah maya pratagnana asuram bhavamashritah. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lost among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. So this is Muda. Miscreants means Dushkrutinah, Mudaha, Naradamaha, Mayapartagnanaha, and Asuram Bhavam Ashitaha. Now these na prapadyante, na mam prapadyante, do not surrender unto me. A pretty straightforward verse. It is said in Bhagavad Gita that simply by surrendering oneself unto the lotus feet of Supreme Personality Krishna, one can surmount the stringent laws of material nature. Simple sounding sentence, but very deep implication. By surrendering, we can surmount the stringent laws of nature. Daivi yesha gunamayi mama maya duratteya mameva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Only by surrendering, we can overcome this very difficult to overcome material energy. At this point, a question arises. How is it that educated philosophers, scientists, businessmen, administrators, and all the leaders of ordinary men, how is it that they don't surrender to Krishna? Mukti or liberation from the laws of material nature is sought by the leaders of mankind in different ways and with great plans and perseverance for a great many years of birth. So here Prabhupada is saying, yeah, it's not like they don't surrender to Krishna, but they're actually seeking mukti, liberation from the laws of material nature by making in different ways, making great plans. But if that liberation is possible by simply surrendering unto Krishna, then why don't these intelligent and hardworking leaders adopt this simple method? So they are so constantly struggling for years and years to get liberated from the laws of material nature. But it can be very easily achieved by simply surrendering to Krishna. Why don't they do that? The Gita answers this question very frankly. Those really learned leaders of society like Brahma, Shiva, Kapila, Kumaras, Manu, Vyasa, Devala, Sita, Janaka, Prahlada, Bali, and later on Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, Sri Chaitanya, and many others who are faithful followers, philosophers, politicians, educators, scientists, etc., surrender to the lotus feet of the Supreme Person, the all-powerful authority. Really learned leaders, Prabhupada is saying, really learned leaders, they surrender. Those who are not actually philosophers, scientists, educators, administrators, etc., but who pose themselves as such for material gain, they do not accept the plan or path of the Lord. They have no idea of God. They simply manufacture their own worldly plans and consequently complicate the problems of material existence in their vain attempts to solve them. So in trying to solve material problems, they consequently complicate the problems further because material energy is so powerful, it can resist the unauthorized plans of the atheists and baffle the knowledge of planning commissions. Material energy is so powerful, it has to take a particular path, it will take that path. So if somebody is trying to prevent that direction, then it can resist their plans. So we cannot think that everything is under our control. So the Lord wants material nature to work in a particular way, then it will work that way. The atheistic plan makers are described here by the word dushkrutinha, miscreants. All these people who make plans but who don't believe in Krishna, they are dushkrutinha. Kriti means one who has performed meritorious work. Atheistic plan maker is sometimes very intelligent and meritorious also, because any gigantic plan, good or bad, must take intelligence to execute. But because the atheist's brain is improperly utilized in opposing the plan of the Supreme Lord, The atheistic plan maker is called Dushkruti, which indicates that his intelligence and efforts are misdirected. So they have intelligence, but being wrongly used to go against the Lord. In the Gita, it is clearly mentioned that material energy works fully under the direction of the Supreme Lord. It has no independent authority. It works as the shadow moves in accordance with the movement of the object. But still, material energy is very powerful. And the atheist, due to his godless temperament, cannot know how it works, nor can he know the plan of the Supreme Lord. Under illusion and the modes of passion and ignorance, all his plans are baffled, as in the case of Hiranyakashipu and Ravana, whose plans were smashed to dust, although they were both materially learned as scientists, philosophers, administrators, and educators. These Dushkrutinas or miscreants are of 4 different patterns. The first is Mudhas, grossly foolish, like hard-working beasts of burden. They want to enjoy fruits of their labor by themselves, and so do not want to part with them for the Supreme. The typical example of the beast of burden is the ass. This humble beast is made to work very hard by his master. The ass does not really know for whom he works so hard day and night. He remains satisfied by filling his stomach with a bundle of grass, sleeping for a while under fear of being beaten by his master, and satisfying his sex appetite at the risk of being repeatedly kicked by the opposing party. The ass sings poetry and philosophy sometimes, but this braying sound only disturbs others. This is the position of the foolish fruity worker who does not know for whom he should work. He does not know that karma is meant for yagna, sacrifice. So clearly, most people in this material world work like this, beasts of burden. They don't know why they have to work so hard, whom they have to work for, nothing they know. Simply they are slogging because everybody else does. Most often, those who work very hard day and night to clear the burden of self-created duties. Prabhupada said, clear the burden of self-created duties. Like we only created our own duties. Say that they have no time to hear of the immortality of the living being. To such mudas, material gains which are destructible are lives all in all, despite the fact that the mudas enjoy only a very small fraction of the fruit of labor. Sometimes they spend sleepless days and nights for fruitive gain, and although they may have ulcers or indigestion, they are satisfied with practically no food. They are simply absorbed in working hard day and night for the benefit of illusory masters. Ignorant of the real master. Illusory master because they work for company, CEO, manager, country, state, etc. Ignorant of the real master, the foolish workers waste their valuable time serving mammon. Unfortunately, they never surrender to the Supreme Master of all masters, nor do they take time to hear of him from proper sources. Here, foolish workers waste their valuable time serving mammon means bad money, basically. Serving bad money. They never surrender to the Supreme Master, nor do they take time to hear of him from proper sources. The swine who eat the night soil do not care to accept sweetmeats. That means it eats rubbish, stool. It doesn't like to accept sweetmeats made of sugar and ghee. Similarly, the foolish worker will untiringly continue to hear the enjoyable tidings of the flickering mundane world, but will have very little time to hear about the eternal loving, living force that moves the material world. So this is Muda. No time, no time, no time. Busy, busy, busy. Another class of Dushkriti or miscreant is called the Naradhama, lowest of mankind. Nara means human being, Adhama means lowest. Out of 84 lakh species, there are 4 lakh human species. Out of these, there are innumerable lower forms of human life that are mostly uncivilized. The civilized human beings are those who have regulative principles of social, political, and religious life. They should have some principles, regulative principles that regulate them. Those who are socially and politically developed, but who have no religious principles, must be considered Naradhamas. Socially and politically developed. Most people in this Kali Yuga are socially and politically developed, but they have no religious principles, so they are Naradamas. Nor is religion without God religion, because the purpose of following religious principles is to know the supreme truth and man's relationship with him. In the Gita, the personality of God clearly states that there is no authority above him and that he is the supreme truth. The civilized form of human life is meant for man's reviving the lost consciousness of his eternal relationship with supreme truth, the supreme personality of God, who is all powerful. Whoever loses this chance is classified as a Naradama. We get information from revealed scriptures that when the baby is in the mother's womb, he prays to God for deliverance and promises to worship him alone as soon as he gets out. To pray to God when he is in difficulty is a natural instinct in every living being because he is eternally related with God. But after his deliverance, the child forgets the difficulties of birth and forgets his deliverer, also being influenced by Maya, the illusory energy. It is the duty of the guardians of children to revive the divine consciousness dormant in them, in the children. The 10 process of reformatory ceremonies, samskaras, as enjoined in the Manusmriti, which is the guide to religious principles, are meant for reviving God consciousness in the system of varnashrama. However, no process is strictly followed now in any part of the world, and therefore 99% of the population is Naradhama. When the whole population becomes Naradhama, naturally all their so-called education is made null and void by the all-powerful energy of physical nature. They made null and void because these Naradamas, they don't know how to use their knowledge also. So it will all be null and void. According to the standard of the Gita, learned man is he who sees unequal terms, learned Brahmana, dog, cow, elephant, and dog eater. That is the vision of a true devotee. Sri Nityananda Prabhu, who is the incarnation of Godhead as divine master, delivered the typical Naradamas, the brothers Jagai and Madhai, and showed how the mercy of a real devotee is bestowed upon the lowest of mankind. So the Naradama, who is condemned by the personality of Godhead, can again revive his spiritual consciousness only by the mercy of a devotee. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in propagating the Bhagavad Dharma or activities of the devotees, has recommended that people submissively hear the message of the personality of Godhead. The essence of this message is Bhagavad Gita. The lowest among human beings can be delivered by the submissive hearing process only. But unfortunately, they even refuse to give an oral reception to these messages, and what to speak of surrendering to the will of the Supreme Lord. Naradamas, or the lowest of mankind, willfully neglect the prime duty of the human being. The next class of Duskriti is called Maya Paratagnanaha, are those persons whose erudite knowledge has been nullified by the influence of illusory material energy. They are mostly very learned fellows, great philosophers, poets, literati, scientists, etc. But the illusory energy misguides them and therefore they disobey the Supreme Lord. There are a great number of Maya Pratagnanaha at the present moment, even amongst the scholars of the Bhagavad Gita. In the Gita, in plain and simple language, it is stated that Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is none equal to or greater than him. He is mentioned as the father of Brahma, the original father of all human beings. In fact, Sri Krishna is said to be not only the father of Brahma, but also the father of all species of life. He is the root of impersonal Brahman and Paramatma, the supersoul in every living entity in his plenary portion. He is the fountainhead of everything, and everyone is advised to surrender unto his lotus feet. Despite all these clear statements, the Maya Gnana deride the personality of Supreme Lord and consider him merely another human being. They do not know that the blessed form of human life is designed after the eternal and transcendental feature of the Supreme Lord. It means that human beings have 2 hands, 2 legs, etc., because that is the form of the Supreme Lord. All the unauthorized interpretations of Gita by the class of Mayaparata Gnana outside the purview of the Parampara system are so many stumbling blocks on the path of spiritual understanding. The deluded interpreters do not surrender under the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, nor do they teach others to follow this principle. The last class of Duskriti is called Asuram Bhavamashitaha, or those of demoniac principles. This class is openly atheistic. Some of them argue that the Supreme Lord can never descend upon this material world, but they are unable to give any tangible reasons as to why not. There are others who make him subordinate to the impersonal feature, although the opposite is declared in the Gita. Envious of the Supreme Person of Godhead, the atheist will present a number of illicit incarnations manufactured in the factory of his brain. Such persons, whose very principle of life is to decry the personal Godhead, cannot surrender unto the lotus feet of Krishna. Sri Yamunacharya Alabandaru of South India said, "O my Lord, you are unknoble to persons involved with atheistic principles, despite your uncommon qualities, features, and activities, despite your personalities being confirmed by all the revealed scriptures in quality of goodness, and despite your being acknowledged by famous authorities, renowned for their depth of knowledge in transcendental science, and situated in godly qualities. Despite all these three reasons, you are unknowable to persons involved with atheistic principles. Therefore, grossly foolish persons, lowest of mankind, deluded speculators, and professed atheists, as above mentioned, never surrender unto the lotus feet of God, in spite of all scriptural and authority. A long purport. Any questions from anybody? 7.16. Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukrutino arjuna artho jignasur gnani cha bharatarshava. O best among the Bharatas, four kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the absolute. Unlike the miscreants, these are adherents of the regulative principles. They are Sukrutina, and they are called Sukrutina, or those who obey the rules and regulations of scriptures, the moral and social laws, and are more or less devoted to the Supreme Lord. So they are more or less devoted, meaning they sometimes they come to him, sometimes they don't come to him. So more or less they are devoted to the Supreme Lord. Out of these three, out of these, there are four classes of men: those who are sometimes distressed, need of money, inquisitive, searching after knowledge of absolute truth. These persons come to Supreme Lord for devotion service under different conditions. They are not pure devotees because they have some aspiration to fulfill in exchange for devotional service. Pure devotional service is without aspiration and without desire for material profit. न्याविलासिता शून्यम ज्ञान कर्माद्यनागतम आनुकूल्येन कृष्णानुशीलनम भक्तरुत्तमा. One should render transcendental loving service to Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material gain or profit through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. This is called pure devotional service. When these four kinds of persons come to the Supreme Lord for devotional service and are completely purified with the association of pure devotee, they also become pure devotees. So the importance of association is stressed here. As far as the miscreants are concerned, for them devotional service is very difficult because their lives are selfish, irregular, and without spiritual goals. But even some of them, by chance, when they come in contact with the pure devotee, also become pure devotees. So the Dushkrutis also can become devotees by the influence of pure devotees. The Sukrutis also can become pure devotees, all by powerful association. Those who are always busy with fruitive activities come to the Lord in material distress, and at that time associate with the pure devotees and become in their distress devotees of the Lord. Those who simply frustrated also come sometimes to associate with the pure devotees and become inquisitive and know about God. Similarly, when the dry philosophers are frustrated in every field of knowledge, they sometimes want to learn of God and they come to the Supreme Lord to render devotional service and thus transcend knowledge of the impersonal Brahman, the localized Paramatma, and come to the personal conception of Godhead by the grace of the Supreme Lord or this pure devotee. These are Gnanis. This is what third, fourth category, Gnanis. They sometimes want to learn of God and they come to the Supreme Lord to render devotional service and they transcend knowledge of the impersonal Brahman because of the Gnana Marg. They have gained knowledge of impersonal Brahman and think that it is supreme, but when they come here, they transcend that knowledge of impersonal Brahman. On the whole, when the distressed, inquisitive seekers of knowledge and those who are in need of money are free from all material desires, and when they fully understand that material remuneration has nothing to do with spiritual improvement, they become pure devotees. Material remuneration means we do something, we ask for something, that is remuneration. Like, Krishna, please give me this, please give me that. That is remuneration. That has nothing to do with spiritual improvement. When they come to know about that, then they become pure devotees. That means that they go to Krishna not asking for anything. As long as such a purified stage is not attained, devotees in transcendental service of the Lord are tainted with fruitive activities. So this is Mishra Bhakti, search for mundane knowledge, etc. So one has to transcend all this before one can come to the stage of pure devotional service. But it's very clear that the goal is pure devotional service. Right? Okay. Any questions? Okay. 7.17. तेषां ज्ञानी नित्ययुक्ता एकभक्तिर्विशिष्यते प्रियो हि ज्ञानिनो त्यर्थम aham स च मम प्रियः. Of these, the one who is in knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best. For I am very dear to him and he is dear to me. So Krishna is saying here that the Gnani who comes to him is very dear because he's already gone through karma path, jnana path, and now he's coming to Krishna directly. He's very dear to him because first thing is he doesn't have anything to ask. He's in full knowledge and he's always engaged in pure devotional service. Full knowledge means till now he had knowledge only about Brahman, but when he came to Krishna, he came to understand Krishna and now he has full knowledge about Krishna and he is always engaged in pure devotional service. Free from contaminations of material desires, the distressed, the inquisitive, the penniless, and the seeker after supreme knowledge can all become pure devotees. But out of them, he who is in knowledge of the absolute truth and free from material desires becomes a really pure devotee of the Lord. And of the four orders, the devotee who is in full knowledge and is at the same time engaged in devotional service, the Lord says is the best. By searching after knowledge, one realizes that his self is different from his material body. And when further advanced, he comes to the knowledge of impersonal Brahman and Paramatma. The first is that I am not this body, then come to the knowledge of Brahman, then Paramatma, finally Bhagavan. When one is fully purified, he realizes that his constitutional position is to be the eternal servant of God. So by association with pure devotees, the inquisitive, distressed seeker after material amelioration, and the man in knowledge all become themselves pure. But in the preparatory stage, the man who is in full knowledge of the Supreme Lord and is at the same time executing devotional service is very dear to the Lord. Prabhupada is saying, okay, others also will become pure in course of time, but in the beginning, amongst the four, Krishna likes the Gnani. He who is situated in pure knowledge of the transcendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so protected in devotional service that material contamination cannot touch him. So one who is situated in pure knowledge of transcendence. Pure knowledge of transcendence means very clear understanding about Supreme Lord. He is protected in devotional service from material contamination. Okay. 0.18. Udara sarva evaite gnanitvatmaivat nematam astitasya hi yuktatma mamevanu gatim. All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, magnanimous, udara. But he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like my own self. Krishna is saying the Gnani is just like my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service is sure to attain me the highest and most perfect goal. Of course, this is Gnani Bhakta. He is just like my own self. It is not that devotees who are less complete in knowledge are not dear to the Lord. No. It's not that because he is in knowledge only he is dear to the Lord. No. Lord says that all are magnanimous because anyone who comes to the Lord for any purpose is called a Mahatma. For any purpose. Doesn't matter. Akama sarvakama va moksha kama udaradihi. Any of them, they are Mahatmas. The devotees who want some benefit out of devotional service are accepted by the Lord because there is an exchange of affection. Affection means, oh, Krishna is, Krishna will give me something. This is affection. Because he is supreme, he is all powerful, he will give me something. Out of affection, they ask the Lord for some material benefit, and when they get it, they become so satisfied that they also advance in devotional service. Because if they didn't have affection to the Lord, then they would have gone to some demigod and asked him. So, but they have come to ask the Lord. That means that they have some affection towards the Lord. So when they get whatever they want, they will make advancement, they'll make progress. But the devotee in full knowledge is considered to be very dear to the Lord because his only purpose is to serve the Supreme Lord with love and devotion. Such a devotee cannot live a second without contacting or serving the Supreme Lord. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is very fond of his devotee and cannot be separated from him. Sadhavo hridayam mahyam, sadhanam hridayam tvaham, adanyati na janati naham tebhyo managapi. The devotees are always in my heart, and I am always in the hearts of my devotees. The devotee does not know anything beyond me, and I also cannot forget the devotee. This is a very intimate relationship between me, and there is a very intimate relationship between me and the pure devotees. Pure devotees in full knowledge are never out of spiritual touch. Therefore, they are very much dear to me. Krishna says. Okay. Okay, this will do next. We finished 15 till 18, 16, 17, 18. Okay. Anybody has any questions? No questions? Okay. Silent Friday. Thank you very much. We will. So yeah, hopefully Krishna willing from 20th we will start our sessions in classes in JP Nagar. Yeah, I'll announce next week. Okay, so we'll close. Pancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyo cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namah. Samveta Gaura Bhakta. Hare Krishna.